All right. So to end things, let's talk about individual cards. Um, this is a lot of times my favorite part because I get educated by Tommy because he's so good at breaking down individual designs and where they're working or not working. But also, there's just a lot of really great or interesting individual designs. We talked a lot about the execution being good in Ikoria, and I think you see that on a lot of individual cards. Did you have one you wanted to start with? If not, I've got one.
Let me start with the one I absolutely hate, and then we talk about ones I like. Humble Naturalist is a 1 and a green 1/3 that taps to add a mana of any color, but you can only use the mana to cast creature spells. And this
Yeah,
card is on the one hand good, but on the other hand, it is incredibly annoying to play with. And as a result, I just never put it in my deck after doing it a few times because you have to, when you're using it, you have to think about, am I going to use this mana or not? And then you sometimes have like you have a Boon of the Wishgiver in your hand and you're like, oh crap, I have 5 mana and a Humble Naturalist, but it can't cast that. And then sometimes you'll be like, okay, I'll tap my mana and cast this creature now, and then I'll leave up this mana so that I can cast the instant at the end of my opponent's turn. But now I can't because Humble Naturalist can't do that. Just the restriction here was just incredibly annoying and added nothing to the format, in my opinion. And they could have done anything with this card to make it less annoying.
yeah, it's annoying because if you're trying to do like an even Garuda ramp deck, or even just a ramp deck in general, like in blue green, you think, okay, I'm collecting these humble naturalists and these migratory great horns. Well, you can ramp your humble naturalist into the great horn, but not if you want the great horn to ramp, right? Like it doesn't ramp into the mutate super well. Like, are you going to mutate your humble naturalist on turn 3?
You
That doesn't
can't
make as
because
much.
it's a human.
Yeah, you can't do that. Oh, that's true. You can't do that. So you're just gonna play your vanilla 3/4 for 4, but these want to be in the same deck, and they kind of non-bow. Additionally, Migration Path is another really great ramp spell for those decks that costs 4. You think, oh, my 2-drop ramp will ramp into my 4-drop ramp into my Garuda, but that doesn't work either. And yeah, frustrating non-bow. I agree. Um, a card I really loved is Adaro Wandering Monster. And this was just a really fun execution of cycling that feels very red in a fun way, where red is just trying to like their version of card selection is just burning through their deck as fast as possible to try and find what they want, but not necessarily with card advantage being a part of that. And I love the idea of this wandering turtle that's constantly wandering through your deck and the building suspense of, okay, he's cycled it twice now, cycled it 3 times. And it's nice that it has the backup plan of just being a 7 mana 8/8 trample haste, which is great also. And I just thought that that was a really fun design. You talked about the cycling payoffs being different enough that the way the cycling deck plays out can vary. And I liked Utero both as giving your deck a lot of cycling with just one card because you're putting it back in your deck when you cycle it to help that deck sing a little better, while also being a kind of a unique payoff where the payoff doesn't happen for a while. It's delayed, kind of like Ominous Seas. It is kind of a delayed payoff for your cycling, as opposed to the Fox and the Drand Stinger being immediate payoffs whenever you cycle. So I liked the Wandering Monster. It's kind of a fun design.
I absolutely agree, and I know it's a great design because very often I would be looking at a pack and I would look at the I would look at the right pick, and then I would take Yodaro anyway because
Yeah,
Yodaro was just so much fun. And it was like, yeah, I'm going to take this card because I will enjoy it. And that's always a good sign when you're doing something even though you know it's not maximizing your win percentage because it shows you that you're getting that fun value out of it.
yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, your
Let's
turn.
see. I had it up in the wrong page. I wanted to talk about Fire Prophecy. And
Aha.
there's this thing that Wizards is doing lately with commons where they take what's the best common in a color and then they make it better. Like Fire Prophecy, I think, would easily be the best red common if you just
Yeah.
about putting a card on the bottom of your library and drawing a card, but that just makes it even better. And I think it's really interesting that they're giving the red decks this little ability of card selection or whatever. They're sort of like inserting this additional feature in this additional bit of card flow by sort of adding it to a card that anyone's going to take anyway. And I think that's an interesting choice that I'm noting in the same way that we talked about with Blood Curdle earlier. Blood Curdle is not made a significantly higher pick by the fact that they added the menace counter, but adding the menace counter adds texture to the game anyway. And so I think that's an interesting thing that I see happening on a lot of designs these days.
Yeah, my instinct would have been, okay, I want red players to do more rummaging. I'll just like keep pushing my rummaging spells that are, 14th, 15th pick until they're maybe 10th or 11th pick somehow. But I like this approach of being like, we really want you to do this. Your lightning strike now rummages.
Yes. Although I think it's a little weird that it goes on the bottom of your library and not in your discard pile, even though, of course, it would be even more ridiculously good if it went in your discard pile. But
Yeah, I think they decided it was just too good. Um, yeah, for like Phoenix decks and standard and things like that. If your removal is also enabling, your other stuff, it probably shouldn't be that good. Okay. Cards I like. I mean, Shark Typhoon is a wonderful card, but it's a lot of text for something that just says spend 3 mana, draw a card, and get a 1/1 flyer with flash. But, obviously it does a lot of other things too. But the card next to it is the one I actually want to talk about, and that's Sea Dasher Octopus. We made a big to do about how mutate is oftentimes just auras, and you have to find other ways to get back the card disadvantage that will too often happen when you're mutating. And I like that Sea Dasher Octopus gives you a way to get that card advantage back, um, mutating onto something else so that it gives you a card such that if it's removed, you've at least got the card back. It's played really well and constructed for me in the blue-black flash deck that I made, where you've got all of these 1/1 flyers that then you can mutate onto really nicely. Um, yeah,
and
I just like that.
the secret text it has is that it triggers your mutate abilities at instant speed.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is you have the bat, the rare bat that whenever it mutates, can destroy a creature. The issue is that the mutate cost is 6 mana, and you're never doing that in constructed, or rarely, right? Like
Mhm.
not as often as you would think. You're not putting it in your deck as a removal spell for sure. But if you're also running Sea Dasher Octopus, you can use that to trigger your other mutate things really well. So I think that does a good job of shoring up a lot of the weaknesses of mutate while still feeling like a very empowering, flexible card.
I mean, the card's not very good, uh, which is fine. But what I wonder about it is why isn't this a common? They could have just put this in over Thieving Otter because Thieving Otter is the same card. Like the text isn't complicated. It plays well. It isn't overpowering. I think this would have been a nice slot to be two lower rarities than it ended up being. I think maybe Watsy thought
Wow.
this card was going to be really good. I don't know.
I could see it if it cost 4 mana at common. I think it would snowball way too easily if this were at common. Because it essentially gives a form of evasion by being flash. Like if you could cast Thieving Otter, uh, if you could cast Curiosity at flash speed, at instant speed, that's really good because you can make sure you get your investment back by doing it at the end of their turn when they've tapped out or their blockers have all attacked you instead of staying back to block because they don't think you're going to get, they're okay taking a hit from your creature, but maybe they wouldn't have been okay if you also would have been getting a card. I think it just snowballs too easily if it's at common.
I mean, like, paying 2 mana to draw a card in a set where every card lets you pay 1 mana to draw a card doesn't feel like,
Hmm.
it's that strong.
Yeah, but then you can just keep attacking though. Like it's it can be more than
Well, I
that.
mean, if you can get your 2 through or whatever you mutated it on, like, I guess, but I feel like we've passed this point in Magic where draw 2 cards a turn is a good thing to be doing.
Hmm.
Like, Piracy in Arena used to be like, and we old school people like associate like one-sided Howling Mine as like, oh, that's great, but like cards are just so rarely the problem these days when you're playing, and there's just like so many ways to draw cards, and
That's
especially this
true.
set.
That's fair. That's fair.
What you could do, you could just put the word "flash" on Thieving Otter, and then that would make for an interesting card design. I feel like.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe. Maybe. I think I disagree with you there, but I'm intrigued by an environment that has sea dash or octopus at common. I think that's an interesting thought experiment.
And I think it would be interesting even if you like tweaked the cost so that it was a little bit worse. Although, again, I think this was already like usually a seventh pick ish card, so it's not like it's ridiculous. But it's so similar to a common that like you know exactly what common to replace with it, and I think that would be an interesting
Hmm.
thing to experience.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Okay, your turn.
While we're on sea things, I really like Voracious Great Shark as a design.
Oh
I
yeah.
really like that they've been successfully pushing blue away from being the color that like just twiddles its thumbs all day and nothing happens. Like games are just more fun when things happen. And so putting this thing on a 5/4 that does this ability and now you get to attack with this 5/4 or block with this 5/4 or whatever. I think that's a big plus, and I really enjoy that they're pushing blue in this direction, have more play to it and more like directions you can go with it. And I hope they'll do the same thing with red so that red has more play to it than hope to play a 2 power 1 drop into a 2 power 2 drop with haste into lava spike your face uh in slight variation. Like I like that red can do that, but I'd like to see all the colors able to play across a wider range. And I think Voracious Great Shark is a very nice way for blue to be able to extend into this slightly more aggressive side of things.
So you thinking more like flame tongue kavu type designs in red, or you just mean like different dimensions, kind of how a
Yeah,
big
I mean, I think the
body.
problem is like, what am I thinking of is difficult to say because they don't do that.
Yeah.
I would like to see more like I guess what's the pyromancer from Modern Horizons?
Oh,
It's not
it's not young
the one that like you
pyromancer,
run
but
it
it's
twice and makes 1/1s or whatever. Like something that encourages you in red to do more than attack.
yeah.
I mean, you can attack, but just encourages you to play something other than mono red and constructed. Because honestly, I'm sick of playing against mono red and constructed. But
Yeah, or it always being the same. Like something I've noticed is each time there's a new set, mono red mutates a little bit. Like the way it's played best changes. So you had this kind of combo-y version with in Return to Ravnica with the Steamkin, where you're trying to play lots of spells in a turn, and then Spectacle mattered, and then it became a little different when Anax came out and the double strike weapon that flashes in, and then different again with Obosh. But there's always only one perfect red aggro deck. You know what I mean? There's not like different variations with different strengths. It seems like, oh, somebody solved the red deck for this format, and so that's the one we'll all be playing until the next set comes out.
it's especially bad because of the incentives that are created and constructed on Arena and whatnot. And I think almost every card game has a version of this problem where, like, if you decide, okay, I do want to grind currency, you
Mm,
just Google what the best red deck is, you craft those cards, and then you play it so that you can get a win every 3 minutes and then get to your currency so you can do your next draft. And it's like, well, maybe I would have more fun playing this Sultai deck that did things that I enjoyed. But in terms of like, if my goal is to get to my next draft, then that's
Yeah.
terrible because those games are going to take 15 minutes instead of 2 or whatever.
So something that StarCraft 2 does, and they don't have really a currency system, but they do have an XP system, which matters sometimes if they do like a war chest, you're trying to get XP to get the skins that you already paid for or whatever, which is that's a different systems game design argument entirely. But they give you extra experience based on how long the game goes. So that if the game is going long, you're not thinking, I could have, six pooled so many Protoss players by now instead of doing this long grindy game. You don't feel too bad about wasting XP that way. So I think rewarding games for going longer is maybe that's an approach to fix that. But that's kind of a different thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I think they really want to be incentivizing you to play the deck that you think is the most fun. I think that that is the correct thing to incentivize. And I also think that for a lot of purposes on Arena, they could really not reward you for winning or reward you less for winning or not punish you for losing to encourage people to play fun decks. Because I think people playing fun decks are still going to try and craft the whatever ridiculous card for their deck. And sure, you can give some bonus points for winning or whatever, but I think really they should be giving you bonus points, but I think really they should be giving you the majority of the points for playing.
yeah, yeah, that's a good point.
Diverge into my thoughts about this.
Um, I think it's my turn for an individual card. One card that, and maybe you'll disagree with me on this, but I really liked Grim Dancer because the three different keywords counters that you can choose between Menace, Death Touch, and Lifelink, they all combine with each other in different ways for different situations. So like Menace and Death Touch is really good when you're being aggressive. Menace and Lifelink is really good when you're racing. Death Touch and Lifelink is good when you're behind and they have a big thing and you're trying to stabilize. Is that all the combos? Lifelink, Death Touch. I did both menaces. Yeah, so like all three of the different combinations you can make are good in different situations, which I think is a very difficult thing to achieve with that many different counters.
Yeah, I enjoyed playing with Grim Dancer. I'll say I think it was LSV who said, "Would this card be any different if it chose which two you got randomly?" And I think the answer
It
is
would.
basically no.
It would be very different because like I always pick those keywords very specifically based on what the board is. And then later when my opponent plays something bigger that I should have known that they had in their hand, I think, shoot, I should have given it Death Touch. And I think players feeling like their agency matters is huge in the satisfaction and depth of a game. So I think it would be very different if it were randomly selected.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed playing with the card. I didn't
Okay, your turn.
choose which keywords this thing gets. I wanted to talk about Skull Prophet. So this is, I think, an excellent design. It's a black and a green for a mana dork that taps for black and green, and it also taps to mill yourself for 2. So I think that's already a really cool design because it gives you modality between these two things that you might want to do in, say, a black green deck of whatever sort, which is to self mill but also to make mana. I think that's genius. But the reason I wanted to talk about Skull Prophet is actually that if I described this card and asked you to guess its power and toughness, I think almost everyone would guess that it was either a 1/1 or an 0/2 or something dumb like that.
Yeah.
But it's actually a 3/1. And I love that it's a card that has this utility, but also encourages the game to happen. And so you can attack with it if your opponent doesn't play a blocker and say you play this on turn 2 and then you're only going to play a 2-drop anyway. Great, I'll attack with my Skull Prophet and get in for 3, or I'll block your 4/3 with it, or whatever. It's a card that doesn't make you choose between playing the game and having fun. And I love
Hmm.
that.
I I've always thought it was weird. I saw this and my first instinct was, ugh, they're just super pushing something. Like obviously they want self mill to be good, so they put it on a creature that's already good. And I don't like that. I don't like being told what to do because the best cards are that's what they do. However, now that you bring it up, something I like about it is one of the frustrating play patterns with mana dorks. We kind of alluded to it earlier with the um, humble symbiote, whatever it was called.
Oh, humble natural.
Yeah, you invest in this mana dork, and then there's turns where you don't get to use the extra mana. It just feels really bad. But if there's turns where you can't use the extra mana, you can still mill yourself, right? Additionally, the 3 power, if you have this creature, you probably care about milling yourself for one reason or the other. You can chump with it, and as you chump with it, mill too as well, in addition to putting yet another body into the graveyard by chumping and trading, because it has 3 power. So most of the things you can do with this don't feel bad. Like most of it gives you options or gives you some kind of Swiss knife toolbox approach to the game, giving more tools for players to be agents in the game. So I agree.
I admit I usually hate playing mana dorks because sometimes you accidentally draw them and then it always feels terrible.
Yeah.
If you and so I really like any time that they invest the effort to make sure that like the card at least does something if you draw it later. So I really like the design on this card. I think it plays very well. I don't think it's one of the best uncommons in the set or anything, which I also think a nod to the fact that this isn't just like pushed for the sake of pushing it, which I also thought maybe that was what was happening when I looked at it, but I don't think it's in the like top 20 uncommons in the set or anything. But I think it just makes games play better when your utility cards also interact in this fashion.
Yeah. I like that. Um, the card I wanted to talk about was Winota, Joiner of Forces. Uh, she's been tearing up a lot of constructed formats herself, and
He's banned most of them now, right?
I think she's banned. I don't think she's banned in Standard. Maybe she is. I don't know, but she's banned somewhere
Banned here.
or suspended or whatever they call it in Historic, where
I,
they don't
I
want to
think it is
reimburse you,
suspended.
but they don't want you to play with it. Um, her. So this goes back to the human issue that I've had. Like, so this does what we both identified as a good use of humans, where it cares about humans being with non-humans, which I think is one way to make this world feel kind of unique. It's about this symbiotic relationship between man and beast, and the bonding with animals. I think that's really fun and really evocative design. But the reward is not putting a big beast into play, it's putting a human into play when your beasts attack, which is kind of the opposite of what you would think would happen. And the issue is that it reveals how stupid human design is lately, because since everything has to be a human and human tribal matters, you're cheating enormous, big, powerful humans like Agents of Treachery into play. These big, expensive haymaker humans are winning these games. And there's just a lot of knobs on this card that were pushed too far to the right, where it's not just whenever one or more non-human creatures you control attack, it's whenever any of them attack. And there's so many uh, cheap creatures that produce multiple tokens or whatever. Like you can put in several non-human creatures at once, and then it gets you 2 triggers. Winota herself doesn't need to attack, so you can keep her back. You don't have to invest to get the value here. And um, this creature that comes into play, which you didn't have to pay for, and it gains haste, it also gains indestructible until end of turn. So it's not only free, but you for sure will have it on the next turn. These just seem like lots of
I'll be
different
honest.
obnoxious
Played it
choices.
a lot, and I didn't know it granted indestructible.
Oh no. Yeah.
It's just like that's just like so irrelevant that I just never noticed when I was playing it in playing it in limited.
Yeah, it's irrelevant because the card is bonkers even if it didn't grant indestructible, right? It's usually just a giant
Right.
haymaker attack with huge amounts of power. And top 6 cards of your library to make sure you find that human. Like, what since this is a repeated trigger that can happen anytime any individual creature attacks, why are they so worried about it whiffing ever? You know what I mean? Like, anyway, I just think it's obnoxiously pushed. A lot of the knobs too far to the right, and that's more of a play design critique. But I think it's also evidence of, like, it's a good example of when a lot of different knobs are too far to the right and should have been tapped back a bit. And also that I don't think the reward should be humans. Like, humans are supposed to be small, and when your human tribal designs highlight that Magic actually has big, beefy humans with big ETBs, that's not good for the game.
I totally agree that what the logic was when they were designing this is, oh, well, getting a human is a small reward. They're like one ones or two twos or whatever, and
They're
didn't really
riding
think about the
beasts,
fact that
right?
this is going to be flipping in
Yeah,
all of these agents of treachery in particular.
yeah. Although that's also a problem with just the general prevalence of ETB designs generally, but that's a topic for another day. Okay,
Do
your
we
turn.
do we each do one more? Uh,
Yeah, you want to do one, and then maybe I'll. I actually don't have one in mind right now, but just scrolling through, there's a bunch of ones I like. You want to do one more, and then maybe we'll finish there.
I wanted to talk about this cycle of five mythics
Okay,
that
good.
all they're all mutate. So Brokos is one of them, and I don't have one in particular in mind because the answer is if you're in draft, you're just going to take it and then it's going to do something fun and whatever. But
Yeah,
I really like the way that they have this hybrid mutate cost, and I notoriously hate hybrid mana,
yeah.
but I really like the way that this is sort of it's all so Brokos, for example, is always green, but then you can choose whether you want to also pay blue or black. And so this gives you a really interesting sort of pivot card in draft that lets it end up in a bunch of very different looking decks that you can make work. And so you can splash it in all kinds of interesting ways. So just I really like that these cards, which are of course like at the very high end of the power level for limited, but they end up in a bunch of different places. And so that
Mm,
was fun and led me to still feel like I had choices even when I was taking this mythic that was super powerful. And so that's nice as opposed to just opening some mythic and being like, okay, well, I guess I have to draft XYZ now.
yeah, yeah. I really liked that. When I saw these and I saw the hybrid costs and the mutate costs and all the different colors, I was like, oh my gosh, these are just weird, overly pushed mythics for Year of Commander or whatever. They want people to use these as commanders. But in play, I've loved resolving every single one of them. And they're the kinds of cards you have to play with to really appreciate how powerful and fun they are. Like, we all kind of know they're powerful just by looking at them, but the play patterns are actually really cool. Like Bracos, for example, you can cheat the mana to play it. Like, I can't afford all three colors, but I can actually put it in a blue green deck or a black green deck that doesn't also have the other color. But if you want to repeatedly mutate it, you have to have other non creatures, or you have to have other non human creatures in play. And so, while it looks like it could be repetitive play pattern, you have to keep putting out specific kinds of creatures over and over for you to be able to do that. And I like
Fortunately,
that.
you only need to attack with a 6/6 trampler so many times, and then they're dead. So it doesn't get too repetitive.
That's true. That's true. Uh, and it's basically the same with all the others. Like, you can cheat the three color cost by using the mutate, but that imposes other costs on your deck as well, which is a lot like Companion. You can do something powerful, but you have to build your deck a certain way. And I think all that combined has led to some unique experiences and unique decks for my Ikoria.
I feel there's one more card we should talk about to go out on, uh,
Okay.
which is Zenith Flare. I think we have to say what we think about Zenith Flare because a lot of people have talked about how this card should have been a mythic, or it shouldn't have hit
A
players,
mythic.
or it shouldn't have gained life, or whatever. And so I'm curious if you think Zenith Flare is in the wrong place, or if you like it or whatever. I'm just curious your thoughts about Zenith Flare, since it ended up being the card I think that defined the whole format.
I think it's fine. I think maybe it could have cost 5 instead of 4. Um, but I think it's fine. Like, those decks don't exist without Zenith Flare. You know what I mean? Like, they do something really silly and then they never win. And I think you kind of need Zenith Flare as a finisher for those decks, and it rewards the you being in the color pair. And if you're doing something else in Jeskai colors, it kind of makes you think about maining a few more of those cycling one cards, to use it just as removal. I think it's fine. I understand how powerful it is, but it's kind of like Lava Axe being too strong, because the card that beats you isn't really the card that beats you a lot of the time. You know what I mean? Um,
Right, right.
what the real thing you're losing to when you lose to Zenith Flare is that you didn't do anything while they spent all their mana cycling. That's what you're losing to, in my spiky opinion. Game design perspective, I think it incentivizes interesting things, and so I'm good with it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. One thing I really like about the design of Zenith Flare is that I complained earlier that when you pay off cycling, it's weird that you're paying people for not playing their cards.
Yes.
But Zenith Flare doesn't actually care if you play the card. So if you like play your 2/2
Oh,
and then block it, it still rewards you for it. And so I actually really like that as a
that's
cycling
cool.
payoff. I think if I were to make one tweak to it, because I do think it's a little weird when the number one card to pick in the set is an uncommon, or even if it's like in the top 5. I think it's a little weird. But I actually think I would make it only hit players rather than only hit creatures if I were to
Hmm.
suggest a tweak. Because I think it really is intended to be a lava axe, and it's a super feel bad moment when you're zenith flaring your opponent's creature anyway, because that means you're going to lose the game. Uh, so
Yeah.
I think you could make it worse, uh, but make it play better and feel better by making that kind of tweak to it. But I agree with you. I think it's basically fine where it is. I think it needed like to be a little worse. I think just so that you would sometimes think about not picking it when it was in your first pack. Uh, but overall, I think I'm quite happy with the design, and I think it feels very unique as a red white card.
Yeah. And that's when I look at color pairs that are problematic when you're trying to come up with archetypes in sets that I make. Blue green is always some stupid rampy value thing. Red white is always some stupid aggro thing. And I love it when they find a unique take on that. And I liked that they used cycling for red white. Um, I think that was a fun choice.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, they took an archetype that's usually the most predictable and boring, um, and made it into one of the most unique in the format. So very cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we might be alone in the world and not hating red white cycling as an archetype. It's like I never got sick of playing it, and I never got sick of playing against it.
Yeah, I
But
don't
people would
think I did
describe
either.
it and sound like, oh, like there's just no way you can win if your opponent like goes turn one plains, turn two mountain. It's just it because they're gonna whatever whatever. And I felt like there was a lot of play to it.
Yeah, I think it felt like you're playing against a solitaire deck because they have a clock on you, but they have a clock on you if they're playing aggro anyway, right? It's just it doesn't feel so much like they're playing solitaire against you. Um, it- yeah, and I think maybe that's the negative feeling there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they're still having to interact with you because I mean they're still like tapping your creatures and blocking and valiant rescuing and all these sorts of things. So I didn't feel like really dislike when decks feel like I'm playing against a deck that like if it does its thing, it's going to end. Really, with you, I or with this, I felt like you said earlier, it sort of feels like if this game goes on for a long, long time, I'm going to lose unless I'm holding up neutralize.
But that's good strategic direction too. Like it's a strategic signpost that helps players then have to come up with new plans or adapt or make decisions other than um, even if they don't draw the right cards, letting them know what they hope to draw, I think is better for games than, oh, it doesn't matter what I draw. I'll just play whatever I curve out into. Um, I think letting players know that they're going to run out of time at some point gives a good strategic dimension to the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want games to go on forever. I don't think it's good when
Yeah.
that happens. Although I did love Ethan Sachs posted a screenshot with the caption, "What are you at?" And it shows the opponent at 21, and his hand is just 3 Zenith Flares for 7.
That's pretty good.
If I was his opponent, I probably wouldn't have been too happy about the way that game went.
Yeah. That's funny. Okay, well let's end it with Zenith Flare then. It's the zenith of our design review. We've come to the end. I don't know if that's actually technically a zenith, but we've come to the end of it. I loved this set. I enjoyed playing it. I enjoyed this talk with you. Let's end with where can people find you? What are you doing in the future?
So I am at Delirium Mouse on Twitter, which is DELIRIMOUSE. So if you want to see my commentary on Magic, I sometimes post about Magic there. Although lately I have been posting a lot about math stuff, and I have a YouTube math channel. So if you want to see various YouTube math videos, that is Zeta Math on YouTube.
Cool. I'm basically just here on this channel. If you're interested in custom magic stuff, I'm on the Custom Magic Discord. I think there's a link for that on the Custom Magic subreddit, even though they're not officially connected to the Discord channel. You can hit me up to talk about it, any kind of game design or magic or anything you want to talk about. I'm also on Twitter at CDuzett, CDUZETT. I don't often talk about magic or things like that on it, but you want, that's my Twitter. And then yeah, I'm hoping to put out some more videos. I think last time we did this, I had said we were hoping to do some more videos other than just the big exhaustive design reviews, but hopefully that will happen. I might show some custom cards that I've been working on in a video and talk through my thoughts on those. We might be doing some design reviews of other magic sets that have already come out from a while back, or even looking at custom magic sets.
You're going to play Monster Train, and we're going to do a design review of that, right?
That's true. I need to play Monster Train, and then we can do a design review of Monster Train, and that should be fascinating too. So watch this space for hopefully more game design review content. And with that, thank you for sticking with us through this. Hopefully it was informative and useful and entertaining for you. I know it was for me. I really enjoyed this. Thanks for coming on, Tommy, and thank you guys for watching.
Absolutely. Stay safe out there.
Yep, stay safe.